Hello, welcome to the Nameless Ones. Today we are talking about love. There's a misconception that if love is a success, if it's real, if it's true, then it must be till death do you part. And as we go deeper into the fifth dimensional timeline and we live out more authentic lives, you yourself personally or those around you will be experiencing a change and a shift in how we interpret love. So a very, very old-fashioned traditional idea is that if people divorce, it's a failure. If a couple break up, it's a failure, and that's simply not true. There are people, when you think about their face, their energy, their eyes, and it doesn't have to be romantic love. It could be somebody who lost a mother when they were a child. But even now, 40, 50 years later, when they think about the energy of their mother and how unconditionally kind and gentle and loving they were, you can actually feel that their love is present, that it's real, that it's real time. That's how powerful the bond is. It's a present tense love. Even though technically you haven't physically been in their presence since you were a child. It's the same with all love. Love is love is love. And I'm noticing a trend at this time with my clients. And even in my friendships, my personal life, I'm noticing this trend. There is a lot of breakups. It's like breakup city. Especially during eclipse season, that's when you tend to see more and more breakups and more people who suddenly decide that they simply need to be apart in order to keep growing and expanding further as human beings. So that doesn't surprise me around eclipse season when I notice these changes, because eclipses will eclipse whatever is not working out of your life. Now, to say that, in saying that, it is a time of destiny and fated events. So a lot of true love partnerships often start and paths are crossed during eclipse season also. So it's I don't want you to think that eclipse season is doom and gloom. It's certainly not. It is a masterclass in expansion, in growth, in spiritual evolution. So if you can trust that what is eclipsed out is the universe or your higher self's way of getting you on the path to where you want to be, things will go a lot smoother. But like I said, a lot of fated relationships and marriages to be often start and begin on the eclipses as well. So it is a time of birth and death, death and birth. And as we know, those two beautiful life-changing experiences of birth and death always go hand in hand in some shape or form. You'll often see in a family when the matriarch or the elder of the family transitions and dies and goes back to source, you often quickly hear of a birth soon after, or somebody announces pregnancy. So there's always this partnership of birth and death holding hands, and one stimulates and activates the other. But back to this misconception that has been carried through, and people still to this day can buy into the idea, myself included, that when there is two people who truly love each other and for whatever reason they decide that even though they love each other, maybe it's a lack of compatibility, maybe it's circumstantial, financial, who knows, but people have this thing that they fail somehow. And if you're somebody who's going through the grief and loss of a breakup, first of all, I feel for you, and I extend so much healing, loving light to you, because I think breakups are not fully embraced to the depth and pain that they can cause us in our lives. I don't think they get enough respect, breakups, especially if you weren't married to your partner. I think there's a very traditional, conventional view that, oh well, they weren't married, it wasn't a divorce, right? There are those of us who had relationships that were absolutely a marriage of a sort. They were a marriage of hearts and minds and souls. And just because somebody doesn't have the piece of paper, that piece of paper doesn't mean your relationship means more or less than anybody else's. So I think honouring the depths and quality of that connection that you're grieving is important, even if other people don't respect it because maybe you weren't married, you didn't have the ring or whatever. It's important that you yourself honour, this was a big loss in my life, or this was a big moment of true love in my life that I have to now walk away from. And that's a big ask, and it's a big endeavour for the soul to do, especially when a lot of people would say, but there was no betrayal, or there was no unfaithfulness or whatever. Understand this. On the spiritual path, it helps to understand, to see everything from a higher perspective, because sometimes the practical daily life of things just doesn't make much sense. But when we rise to a higher perspective, it can help us put things in their rightful place. We have made many soul agreements before we came into this lifetime with other soulmates. Soulmates meaning a mate of your soul, someone from your soul tree, your soul family. And many of those agreements included that we will be together for a time. We will be together until we reach the point where this breakup is going to cause you on a soulful level to have to branch out and have to face your shadows, and maybe even trigger you and push you into doing something big with your life that you simply would not have done had you stayed in the comfortable confines of that relationship. So how is that a failure? How, from the higher soul eyes, through the soul perspective, is that conceived of as a failure? It's not a failure. It is an important part of your growth and evolution as a soul, having this masterclass human experience. So we need to stop beating ourselves up about relationships, friendships, marriages that didn't work. There's a reason that they needed to naturally conclude so that we could go on to do other things, have new experiences, perhaps meet other soulmates or a twin flame or somebody else along our timeline that is perhaps better suited to that period of our life. It's like the majority of people do not stay with their first love. Now, I'm not saying that there are people who marry their first love. You can see them on YouTube. There's amazing stories, and I particularly love those first love romances, because there's something so pure and beautiful and poetic about the first love that's just, it's just magic, isn't it? But if you were to really practically, and we have to be practical about life, because life is, it is a practical thing, you know, there's nuts and bolts to this life experience. And if I said to those of you, some of you who are not with your first love now, could you be married now to your first love? Most of you would balk and say, oh God, no. Because I'm not a 15-year-old kid anymore. I'm not that person anymore, right? I've grown and evolved and I've stretched and I've changed. So it's the same with our romantic relationships. You're either growing together and evolving together, or you're growing apart, and it's one or the other. And when you truly love somebody, you would never stand in the way of their happiness, of their growth, of their evolution, because we're all here to evolve and we're all here to grow, and we're all here to find and enjoy happiness. So I think as long as you're not carrying any bitterness from the divorce or the breakup, and as long as you're truly able to send love in the direction of that person and genuinely say, thank you for that beautiful experience of love and the gifts it gave me and the memories I've created and the growth and expansion, and you're able to drink all the beauty of that in, that's, you have not failed. They have not failed. If anything, everything has flowed just right, and you're exactly where you need to be. And I'm making this video because specifically there's been quite a few clients, my private clients lately, who seem to have this, it seems to be a thread. You know, there's a lot of people coming to me declaring that they need to divorce or they need to leave their partner. And the thread is that it's probably a long time coming, and there's a lot of fears around that, or there's a fear of failure. And I'm just here to say to you, you have not failed. If your heart is telling you that you're constricted, you're restricted where you are, and it's time for you to spread your wings and fly, it's perfectly okay. I'm giving you permission, not that you need my permission. I'm giving you permission to empower yourself, to give yourself permission. I'm reminding you that you get to choose what you want in your life, and you get to choose how it all goes. Now, the other side of that is, there are times we may be tempted to break up or walk away from a marriage or a long-term partnership out of anxiety or fears or insecurities. And that's where we have to get real in ourselves and say, is it genuinely time for me to spread my wings and fly? Or am I just insecure and I don't feel good enough and I'm exhausted working on the relationship and I just need a break? So it's really important to clarify between the two. And I would say, if you're wavering, if you don't feel clear, there's no harm in saying to your partner, I need to take some space. I need a break from the grind of trying to find the solution here, and just allow us both to find that clarity in our own space, in our own minds. There is a relationship tool that some counsellors use that say you literally take a month apart, 30 days from your spouse or your partner. And you agree before you part that when you meet up again, you will meet up in such a cafe at such a time, because there's no contact in that month. Like, I'm talking zero. You cannot text, you can't call. It's zero contact. If after that time, when you meet at the agreed space and time, you see that person and you're like, oh, I want to be with you. I love you. I cannot and do not want to do this life without sharing it with you. You stay together and you make a commitment to work through those issues. Maybe go for couples counselling, whatever is necessary. You do the work so that you're both getting back on track. And having that time apart and getting that clarity can be the spur to actually do that. And you'll want to, because you'll feel it in your heart. Your heart will say, I believe we can work on this and we can get through this patch. And understand that there are different stages in relationships, and there is a power struggle stage, and that power struggle stage is very tough, and the majority of relationships do not pass it, which is why you have a lot of people breaking up after a short time, because the power stage, the power struggle stage, is about you've fallen in love, you've merged, and then there has to be this coming back down to planet Earth. There has to be a grounding of that love, and there can be control issues, who's more powerful or dominant than the other, and the egos play out all their fears and insecurities. But if you can get through that, happy days. And any couples that are long-standing, married for a long time, they will happily tell you about the different stages and phases. And the very last phase is often commitment. That's the funny thing. We think in the beginning, when we're in that beautiful, passionate honeymoon phase, that we're all in. But really, how can we be all into something that we don't fully know on a practical level, right? We're going off these romantic sparks and these biological attractions. But I do believe in love at first sight. I do believe in that. I do believe that there are times, I think it's rare, maybe once, twice if you're lucky in your lifetime, where you cross eyes with another soul and you just know, you're going to be with that person and you're going to love them and they're going to love you, and there's a beautiful flow to that. And you often hear of this gorgeous romantic phenomenon of men. This is a very common thing for men. I don't know why so more so for men, but where they see a woman, she walks into the room. You hear this all the time. And they just know, they knew. They're like, oh my God, I love this woman. Who is this woman? I need to know who she is. I want to be close to her. I want to talk to her. I want to get to know her. And you hear as well of men literally saying, I'm going to marry that woman. See that woman who just walked in the room? That's my wife. I've heard first-hand accounts of this 100 times from all different generations, from young to old. Couples that met at 15 and got married at 22 and still together years later. And couples that have been married for 50 years. And the man says, oh, I remember the day she walked into my life. I just knew that was my wife. I knew that she was the one. I'm sure women have that too. But I guarantee you it's way more. It's like men have this thunderbolt of clarity. That's a beautiful spiritual gift that they're given. And like I said, I'm sure women have that moment too. But in my experience, it's just been like 95% more common in men as opposed to women. I find that women, and I hate to generalize here, but indulge me, I find that women are a little bit slower in actually getting clear on, how do I actually feel about this guy? And then, of course, as I said, I do believe in love at first sight. I had that happen to me. I met somebody and I just knew in that moment, I actually saw my lightning strike thing. And I knew that this was a soulmate, and I knew that we would be together, and I knew that he loved me and I loved him, and that even though we didn't know anything about each other in this lifetime, about our current personalities, nothing, and everything that I predicted happened. We also get intuitions about people. We might be very attracted to somebody and we get a red flag. We get something in our gut that says, careful now, do you really want to get involved with this person? Because this is going to end badly. And oftentimes we're right. And we look back and go, oh, on that first date, I knew he was trouble, or I knew she was going to be bad news down the line, but we didn't listen. So it requires scrupulous honesty in these romantic interactions we have, especially in the early days, because hormones, chemistry can be very clouding, can be very disillusioning. So we have to be really, really careful to pull back regularly and take our time and tune in and ask, how am I feeling? And giving yourself space to actually know what your honest feelings are about the situation and about the person. And like I said, when the honeymoon phase ends, as it does, so basically for the first year or two, there's a hormone called PEA, and it's pumped through your system. And that softens the blow of any conflict. You know, you have a little row with your honey bunny and it's all smoothed over pretty quickly. That's because the PEA, it's a big long word, but for short they just call it PEA. That chemical is trying to get you to mate and connect and to partner up and to nest with that person. So it's softening everything. It's putting like a lovely glowing filter. The rose tinted glasses are on. But the true love comes as we age, as we change, as we support each other through the various life stages and phases, and we're still able to look at that person and say, yeah, you're the one for me. I love you. And I've loved you always, and that hasn't changed. And being able to adapt to that and be flexible in that is so important in love, because you're not going to be able to receive love if you're not open to it. And you would be shocked at the amount of human beings that are absolutely terrified to receive love. And I mean, scared silly. The one thing that they actually really truly need and want, and it's like, woo, careful what you wish for. So, like I said, it's eclipse season, a lot of death, a lot of endings, a lot of shifts and changes, but also a lot of births, also a lot of destined soulmates crossing paths right now saying, ooh, I know you. Yeah, you're familiar. We have a soul agreement that we're going to be together. But don't put the pressure on yourself. Don't let society let you think that you have to stick your relationship into some kind of box or some kind of, you don't have to follow any rules. You just have to follow the standards of your heart. And as long as you're following this, that's what's important. And sometimes following this means allowing things to end and conclude and complete, and to do that with grace, with tenderness and with love. And I have to say, it's something I've always been good at, and I've always it's not easy, but it's important to me. If I'm letting someone go out of my life, if I'm ending a relationship, which I did not that long ago, I always think you have to treat it with such tenderness and respect and honor and full of love. Because to do anything else would be a dishonor and a disrespect to the beautiful relationship that you had with that person. And I mean, for me, this person was a huge part of my life, and I made some of the most important memories thus far with that person. So I have nothing but love for that person. So it's all about honoring that. And it is a very delicate thing to do. It's a very, very painful thing to do. I feel that we don't respect breakups as much as we should, whether they, as I said, whether they were your husband, wife, partner, girlfriend, whatever you want to call it, boyfriend. But what's important is that you do something, do some kind of ritual, or do something to mark it for yourself. Because there's a reason we bury the dead, and there's a reason we mark things that are dead, or that we put a headstone on. There's a reason we mark the little deaths or big deaths in our life, because we want to pin them down. We don't want them following us around like a ghost, which is something that I've struggled with. So just remembering not just compassion and tenderness for the other person, but also for yourself. I know some of you watching this message right now, you're meant to see this because you are going through a big, big life change in your personal relationships. And for some of you, there's children involved and everything, and it's really, really big, and it's going to have a big impact. But if it's right for you, and if you're clear about that, you can do it. You have the strength to do it. And this closing that door, is so you can walk forward for a while and then open a new door and enter a whole new time in your life. And I wish that time in your life is full of all the love that you can allow yourself to receive, because you deserve that and more. That's my thought for the day. I wish you love, I wish you peace, I wish you harmony, and most of all, I wish you a loving relationship with yourself, because God knows all the other relationships spring and flow from that one. Namaste.